Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me tonight to talk about efficiency and perfection. So let's get started. If you like what you hear today, please leave a like, subscribe, tell your friends, send me a message. Thanks for joining me tonight to talk about that kind of double-edged swords of efficiency and perfection. You may have noticed, by the way, back home in the main studio, kind of living in the lap of luxury tonight. And this is kind of based upon some of the things that came to my mind over the past 10 days or so when I was traveling across the country. As you follow me along, I went from basically from here to see some friends in Mexico, from Mexico back to Houston. Houston, drove to San Antonio, then from San Antonio to El Paso, picked up a rescue dog, and then rescue dog's name Rocket. And Rocket and I spent the next 5 days driving like mad people to get back across the country to get here before the big storms came across the Midwest and the plains. And it turns out we made it home literally with like an hour to spare before it started to snow. So we were very fortunate that way. But it was an exciting time. It was a good time. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that came to mind in the course of that trip and just in general, some of the things I've read recently, unrelated, but they played into it. So again, kind of the theme is efficiency and perfection. And so I saw a story in the Wall Street Journal, kind of a story review of it was talking about the driverless Waymo taxis in Los Angeles. And I know the writer's work well. I read her quite a bit and generally respect it, but kind of took an exception to a comment that she made. And the comment was, some people, and I've excerpted part of it. Some people say part of the Uber fun is not knowing what kind of driver you'll be stuck with. Actually, no one says that. I loved the privacy of not having a human driver, end quote. And that whole concept made me a little sad, actually. I, for one, almost always enjoy every Uber driver or Lyft driver that I interact with. We may not always end up buddies, though sometimes we do, but I always learn something either about them or myself, and often both of us. It's kind of this sort of the same concept of moving into a neighborhood that where only people have identical political beliefs as you do. And when I heard that the first time, it's become quite common. My thought was, well, it's nice to know that ghettos of all sorts are still not only thriving, but they're kind of now considered essential knowledge when you're house shopping, to make sure you're only with like people. And so that whole concept really bothers me on a lot of different levels. One of it has to do with how the country runs. And the US runs by basically discussion and sharing of ideas and coming to consensus on ideas. And when everybody isolates themselves, it's very difficult for that to happen. And it kind of comes down to efficiency versus community. Yes, maybe a driverless taxi is in a sense more efficient, but when you have efficiency, it means you're trading one thing for another thing. And efficiency basically means that you're losing something. And often we don't realize exactly what it is that we're losing until it's kind of too late to recover it. And many times, we talked about this before, the supposed win-win situations. Win-win is really a false concept to my mind, because what it really is the people who are saying that we're winning on both sides just don't care about what's being lost. I work in the toll industry as part of my job. There was a huge discussion when they wanted to get rid of the toll collectors on the Golden Gate Bridge. And if you've ever been to California, California is a very weird place in many ways. The friendliest runners, this is completely counter to everything you hear in general. The friendliest runners, because I used to run a lot more and still do run when I travel, that I've ever met are not in California. California actually were the unfriendliest runners I ever came across. Because you'd be running down a path, you see somebody coming, you say, "Hey, good morning," and look at you. "What do you want? Why are you talking to me? What, you're weird. What is it? Are you a creep or something?" I said, "Good morning." Kind of get over it, will you? And you walk through New York City or run through New York City, or someplace around the city, which is supposed to be such an unfriendly city, and most people there, if you say morning, they may look at you a little loud and say morning. And it always struck me as a place that claims to be so accepting is actually so guarded and not. And there's this funny trade-off that happens when you don't have discussion and you don't have open communication in an area. And this whole concept of efficiency at the expense of community is really kind of coming more and more between things like driverless taxis, and self-driving cars and social media channels where you just get fed more of the same that you look at. So pretty soon your whole world is just what you already believe. So, like I say, there's something to be said for, yeah, you saved a few minutes and you got to work on your report or something while you're in the taxi, and that's great. But you lost something too, and that is getting a different viewpoint from your own and learning something about the rest of the world. And related to that, I'm going to put up a URL here, and the URL doesn't read very easily, but it's ICC, which is Immaculate Conception Church of Alamogordo.org, and that's the name of the city, Alamogordo. And here's their carefully crafted bulletin. The Immaculate Conception Church, that is the church in Alamogordo. That's where I stopped a week ago Sunday. And, in the name of efficiency, we built, and it was literally efficiency to get military supplies across the country, that we built the interstate highway system. And so it's certainly more efficient. I mean, I crossed the entire United States in less than 5 days, and I was not pushing hard for the first 2 days. So yes, it's very efficient, but I'm really glad that part of the time when we weren't pushing hard, we were doing things like seeing all the little towns and meeting the delightful and welcoming Spanish congregation at the Immaculate Conception Church in Alamogordo, New Mexico. And so another case where, yes, it's more efficient just to hop on the interstate, drive to can't drive anymore, go to a hotel where you speak to the person at the front desk and no one else, maybe, use DoorDash, have food sent to your room so you don't have to deal with anybody at a restaurant, and bright and early get up, go to the self-serve gas station, fill up, get back on the highway and just go. Is that more efficient? Yes, it's more efficient. Do you lose a lot in the process? Yes, you lose a lot in the process. Like seeing all the nifty people at Immaculate Conception Church who didn't know me and still took a chance, opened up, put up with my horrible Spanish, and just made the trip memorable. So that's kind of the end of my rant on efficiency per se. Just remember when you do things more efficiently that you're giving something up in that process, and keep track of what it is that you're giving up, because a lot of times what you lose in the quest for efficiency is more valuable than we first realized. But the second half of our title, the kind of the silent cousin to efficiency, is the pursuit of perfection. And that happens in many different ways. Perfection and the pursuit thereof exists in many different levels. Of course, one of the big ones is always the pursuit of personal beauty, being perfectly beautiful. And obviously that's the driver of many commercial fortunes, by telling whole groups of people how imperfect they look, but they could change that by using the makeup or the hair dye or whatever product we're selling. And there's a whole beauty industry around that. And it's a very disturbing industry on many different levels. But there's also the perfection of conformity. And that's evidenced, by many of the AI photo enhancers. And I'll skip to the punchline right away. You are, and you look like, and you're exactly who and what God wanted you to be. Exactly. Everybody wasn't supposed to look the same. You shouldn't look like some supermodel's PR agency said you should look, or not some retouched cover photograph on a magazine, but you look like a real, imperfectly beautiful or handsome person in your own individual way. How is this related to efficiency? Because both are trying to take away the reality of human existence and personal uniqueness and commoditize them. The belief that there is only one way to live and only one way to think, so that we'll choose the most, cloistered and isolated way of living so we don't have to challenge ourselves and our beliefs, is not a solid way to live. And relatedly, that there's only one or a limited number of ways to appear so that we can feel smug criticizing other people that don't live up to our own approved adopted standards. This is what's driving many of the bad behaviors we see all around us. If we're living our life efficiently in our own self-driving electric car, looking at as the world expects us to look and acting like the media tells us to act, then there's no reason to question anything. We are, in our own view, living perfect lives. And I suggest that when you live like that, you're really not living at all. You're just kind of play acting a role that someone else has defined for you. The alternative way is to live your own life, to your own vision, in ways that you see fit. This is what we talk about all the time, and this is where this is all heading. People, I get comments, goes, why don't I personally have solar panels on my roof? And remember, if you listen to me long enough, I've said this before, I used to sell solar systems. So why don't I have them on the roof of my house? Because I would have had to cut down basically a whole little mini forest, a whole raft of CO2 capturing trees to get the proper exposure. And not just a couple trees, it'd be like a couple dozen trees. And so not only do you lose the CO2 capture, but you also lose, all the homes for the birds, a bunch of those, like one of them was a mulberry tree. A lot of things come here to eat the mulberries. So there's a big cost to that. But that doesn't stop the comments about my being kind of like behind the times and not really understanding and not being efficient enough. But those comments really don't affect me because I know the real reasons and the real world trade-offs behind the decision. So beware the temptation to always try and be more efficient in your ways, especially when the world's telling you how to be efficient. You truly can't gain something without losing something else. You may not care what's lost, but there may be a bigger cost than that loss than you first think. You want to spend your time in the cab reading news you already agree with instead of having a lively political discussion with the driver, right? Well, you do so at the risk of isolating yourself from the world in general and living in a personal bubble of sameness. Feeling out of place because you don't even know what this year's color choice was, what the official color of the year. I kind of consider it a badge of honor, frankly. And if someone's going to judge me because of my style, then I just use that as kind of a filter to help me avoid shallow people. Be proud of yourself and confident in your own choices. Do things in the name of efficiency and seeking perfection can be useful, but there really is a dangerous side to that sort of thinking when taken too far. So be careful. Be proud of your uniqueness. Every one of us is different. Every one of us has our own talents. Every one of us has our unique way to approach life. Every one of us has benefits and gifts to give to the world that don't necessarily fit into the mold of commonality. And embrace those gifts, embrace your looks, embrace how you act. Like I said, you are exactly who you're supposed to be. Don't think, oh, I have to take my profile picture and run it through the AI filter to make sure I'm perfectly symmetrical and my cheeks have just enough color or just enough shape or whatever. That's not you. You are you, and you are awesome. So that's it for the evening. No homework tonight. Everyone's kind of still recovering from Thanksgiving and spending too much on the shopping weekend and such. So, just wanted to go over that pretty quickly and remind people, yeah, the goal of efficiency is good, but there's a cost to it. And the goal of seeking perfection is good, but there's a cost to that too. They work hand in hand to kind of keep us conforming to things that don't necessarily serve our own best interests. So, as always, that's it for the evening. Remember, there are many wars going on right now. Ukraine, obviously, it's a mess and a half. Middle East, things are better, but that's kind of a relative term. Africa, and in mid-Africa, Middle East, just lots of stuff going on. pick a place in the world, there's trouble. So if you can and you're able, like you say, ukr7.com, that's our site for where we have links to where you can help support the people of Ukraine. And I have to find it. It's hiding on me right now. ukr7.com. And there's a lot of things there. It's hard to describe to people. I don't post so much on it anymore. But imagine every morning getting up and finding out, if not your town, a town within easy couple hours driving distance away was bombed again. And one of my neighbors, and I respect him, he's a good guy, but said kind of, well, that's not our business. Kind of like, yeah, it is our business. Because if you don't stop it, then nobody stops it. And as the saying goes, the only thing that it takes for evil to succeed is for good to do nothing. And that's definitely the case here. So ukr7.com, I'm not going to get into a big political discussion, but that's the reality. We have the means to stop it, and we're just not doing it. And then relatedly, World Central Kitchen, WCK.org, they're active throughout the world. Anywhere there's a disaster, they will tend to show up, start getting food to people. They usually work from local food reserves, so it helps the economy in many ways. And just an amazing, wonderful organization. WCK.org, check them out. But as I've said many times, if it's something where either you don't like those and you want to donate locally, or you just can't or don't want to donate at all, you still have in your power to change the world and to change somebody's life. It can be something as simple as just smiling at somebody as they walk by you on the street. That you have the power to make somebody's day more positive. And I would encourage you to use that often, and just to try and make the world a better place, one person at a time. Remember that one of the best ways to care for yourself is to care for others. It changes your perspective, gets you looking outside of yourself instead of inside yourself. You have the ability. I would encourage you to use it. So if you can and you're able, one of the links that I set up. If not, just make somebody's day a little nicer. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting or useful, please pass it along. Please subscribe and hit that like button. If not, please drop me a comment as to what you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.